Hi, and welcome back to Bernadette and Linda, Woman to Woman Conversations in Black and White. I'm Bernadette.
And I'm Linda. And we have these conversations, which are frequently challenging for us, even though we're friends, on purpose to learn, to share what we've learned, and most of all, to encourage you, listeners, viewers, to have these conversations across racial lines on sensitive topics, not just about what's going on at school and what's going on with the kids, but actually about some of these hard topics that white people don't really want to listen to and Black people don't feel like they'll be heard and maybe
Right.
don't want to talk about. And so we're doing it. We're sharing.
On purpose. We're doing it on purpose.
We are doing it on purpose.
Yes.
And for anybody that watches and knows us and thinks about it, it's like, yeah, these topics are hard for us too. They're not like sitting on the front porch and having a cup of tea. It's different. So
look, we're doing it on purpose with a purpose.
Exactly. Well put.
We need to make some t-shirts, Linda.
We should.
Yes.
Woman to woman, conversations in black and white. There you go.
Yes. On the back you can say on purpose with a purpose. Yeah.
There you go. Right.
Hey, we're coming along.
We are.
Yes. So today's topic is the color of education. And this came along, as you all know, and many parents who are currently living with this, and Linda has grandchildren, so she's seen a portion of it as well. The educational fallout and ramifications that this pandemic has had globally, but more specifically on our nation of children. I am a counselor at a school, and so I have an inside view, pretty much a bird's eye view, but I'm a counselor at a school in an urban area with predominantly Black children. I live in a suburban area, and I do have children who are in school now as well. And the difference between the amount of time students have spent in the classroom in suburban areas versus urban areas is astoundingly different. And this has been difficult for me as a Black person and as a mother and as a counselor to watch these injustices happen in real life time. And so Linda and I have talked about this, off and on this summer?
Yeah. Now we're into winter right now, but this has been going on since the beginning of school.
Because you were saying was it your daughter, or they were thinking about hiring a teacher for a pod? What was that story you were sharing with me?
Just that my son and daughter-in-law live in a suburban area that's fairly wealthy overall, and middle class and upper middle class generally. And they have a good school, and their school was not going to be meeting for maybe 7 or 8 weeks because of COVID while the teachers got organized. And many families were talking of podding together and hiring a teacher. They didn't end up doing that, but that was talked about. And many choices. But as you and I talked about at the same time, there are plenty of families who don't have that option. They don't have the extra money to hire a teacher to sit there and help the children through their online lessons.
Right. And so that would have been one more step ahead in the race of life. And then I don't believe any of the private or Christian schools closed at all. Many had funding to change ventilation systems and switch things around. So children who have the privilege of attending those institutions haven't lost a single step.
Wow. And those are private and privately paid for, or handled somehow outside of the funding system.
Correct. So those children haven't lost a single step. And then you have children like mine in the school I go to, and like your grandchildren in the public school systems. But even within the public school systems, it is not equitable the way children have been brought back to school and for the amount of time they have. And this is not just here. If you look across the nation in Chicago or New York or any urban area, suburban students, rural students are in classrooms. Many of them 4 or 5 days a week, the entire classroom. And they have not upgraded ventilation systems. They're doing masking, distancing as much as possible, and hand washing. But urban children, children who are already typically a year or two behind, on a good day, have been at home for extended amounts of time.
And I'm guessing a lot of that is unsupervised without an adult around.
Typically in urban areas, you have a lot of parents who may be of lower SES or don't have jobs that translate to I can do this at home. They have
Oh,
on site jobs. And so someone has to physically go to work. And so either children are shuffled with other family members or an oldest child is playing that role. Either way it goes, that it adds an extra burden of stress and pressure to an
right,
already overtaxed family
right.
that is more than likely already subjected to institutionalized racism in multiple forms on a regular basis.
Right.
And now we're creating a pod of children in this generation, mainly Black, Brown, and low SES, that will literally never regain ground or catch up with their counterparts.
Hmm.
So if you sit and think about the long-term ramifications of what this looks like, of who may never now think college is attainable, of who may never take up a skilled craft or be able to get to a place where they can have a thriving livelihood, a lot of those have been cut off at the knees right now.
Right.
And there's no conversation about how do we make this right? What are we going to do to give these children what we have chosen not to because we can?
Mhm. What do you think, as someone who's in the education system, what do you think is, given that there was a lot of confusion, should schools be open, should schools not be open, et cetera? And
Mhm,
I'm not going to go deep into the parents who could afford to hire private tutors. I don't know how big that was, but leaving
mhm,
that aside, which is a kind of its own little thing, there are public schools that are open and there are public schools that have chosen to close. And there was a lot of confusion in the whole nation, obviously. But
mhm.
what do you make of that? Obviously, it's not just one decision, it's lots of different components making those decisions. And the urban children are the ones that are suffering the most from that. But why do you think it's happening that way?
I think, to be honest, part of it is, unfortunately, we still look at Black and Brown and poor people as disposable, and they're not, they don't have the means to file lawsuits against the district to say, you have no reason to be closed. Like often happens in suburban districts over the silliest things versus we want people, more people at the football game. So you don't have that thing. Also, you have more parents who are treading water. And so the time and energy it takes to interact with those within the education system is truly time and energy. And if you're
Mhm.
already treading water, you don't want to waste what finite amount of resources you have on that. And then
Fighting
two,
something, fighting something that you fear you're going to lose anyway,
lose
perhaps.
anyhow. Yes. Yes.
Mhm. After
And
years of experience of that sort. Mhm.
yes, right. And
Mhm.
then also, unfortunately, many parents, not many, a fair amount of parents, well, no, I guess it could be many because only a third of the nation at least has bachelors. So many parents, especially uncollege educated, may not recognize the importance of foundational educational concepts as those who had the privilege or the opportunity to go past high school. And
Right.
so what you don't know can hurt you. And many of
Mhm.
them don't know what they don't know. But to me, the onus of that should rely on the educators. And I understand fully that COVID has affected the Black community disproportionately to the white community for a myriad of reasons. I fully understand that. I also understand if you look at the data, community spread does not automatically correlate to school spreads. Schools
Hmm.
have been shown to be exponentially safer environments than being out in the community. Yet that is still being disregarded for Black, Brown, and low income children.
Hmm.
And that is a purposeful act that needs to be addressed.
Right.
Why is that?
Right. I couldn't agree with you more. And I'm not in those schools to have firsthand experience, but I have been in low income schools myself
Hmm.
as a teacher. My background was in teaching, my degree was in teaching, and over the years, and I understand that I understand that the parents either might not value education like you and I would,
Hmm.
or they might feel it's hopeless to try to complain, or all of the above. And the
Right.
children are the ones who suffer.
Yes.
And then they can't pick themselves up. We all know stories of where parents who didn't have an education said, you must get an education, it's your doorway out of this
Yes.
lifestyle.
Hmm.
And then other parents that didn't care,
Right.
and I'm sure there's some of both, or children
Hmm.
who picked it up on their own because some teacher inspired them, or they had it in them, like, I want an education. And it's
Yeah.
it's harder right now, and there's going to be larger numbers who fall through because they weren't supported or offered the opportunity for a public education, which in
Right.
our country we have taken as a right for a really long time.
Hmm.
And yet it's not actually, like other rights, it's not actually happening in
No.
in big numbers. It's not happening where it needs to be happening. So
It's all dependent upon your zip code,
yeah.
which is an act of discrimination in and of itself.
Right. Right.
Hmm.
So
And so my biggest concern as a counselor is now you've had children home for almost a year, and it is, and I've spoken with you, trying to support your children going to school virtually in and of itself is a full-time job. It has
mhm.
taken both myself and Robert, my husband, tremendous amount of time and energy and hours to help the kids grasp what they need to grasp, do what they need to do in order to be successful. So now imagine you're a low income earner. More than likely, you're a single parent with multiple children. And then you go to work all day. You have to come home and teach this lesson because just because a teacher recorded it doesn't mean the student grasped the information in that manner.
Right.
So
Right.
you have to teach this lesson, help them do their homework, and submit it. And this is day after day after
After
day
day.
after day.
Right.
And we're going on almost a year. And so now, unfortunately, there are many children who have been chastised for giving incorrect answers at home. So we're creating children now who are scared to speak or recognize that mistakes are part of the learning process
Wow.
because parents feel so pressured to get these things done.
Right.
It is, this is a
Depressing.
grave and depressing, and this is a grave injustice that is unnecessary. It is
Hmm.
truly unnecessary.
Right.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what you and I can do. I think talking about it is important.
Yeah.
What do you have any suggestions for people who hear this and want to do something?
I think for people who hear it, and if you live in those urban areas, call your principals, call the superintendent, send an email. Your child has every right to an education as any suburban or rural child. They really do. And especially if no infrastructure changes have been made in other buildings, but children are there, safe and learning and moving forward. Why is that not happening here?
Mhm.
Do not be afraid to ask the question. I think parents underestimate their power and how heavy their participation should be. Ask the questions. Advocate for your child. Why is this so?
Right.
Mhm.
And perhaps even more powerful, like you and I are learning, is like not only advocate for your child, but talk to at
Mhm.
least one or two or three of your friends and neighbors
Yes, get a
in
group.
the same area
Hmm.
and get them to advocate with you,
Yes,
because there's power in numbers, and
yes.
these are These are considered to be rights of the citizens and the population of the United States of America. Your children are not being educated, even with all that is known now about the schools. Then you have the right to ask about that and deal with that. So
yes.
I have to say that my little grandchildren, 5 and 6, have been in school since I think mid to late October, 4 and 5 days a week. Now they missed about eight, and they missed all last spring also because everybody was figuring things out. And then they missed about 8 weeks at the beginning. But they've been in there, fewer children than normal. The parents apparently have some choice, though I'm not in that district, so I don't know. And they are wearing masks every day. Their mom told me they go through at least 3 masks a day.
Yes.
And so the children are being coached. You have to wear your mask. You have to wash your hands. And so they are using what we know as a learning tool. But children adapt pretty well. If the teacher says everybody does this, for the most part, everybody does this. And there's been no significant outbreak in that district that has caused any big problems. If there was, it was handled on a school by school basis rather than district wide. And that makes me really happy. But it also is an indicator that that could be happening in other districts too. Good precautions, good teacher planning. And I think they've had some teachers quit because they didn't want to be in the classroom, but they've hired others gradually. So, and to our listeners, if you, it's like advocate for your children. If you don't have children, if you're older and retired and something, start talking to the parents and say, is this going the way you want it to go? Is this working out? How are the children doing? And start asking questions and become something of an activist about that. The schools is where it's happening every day, you know, and it should be happening every day. So.
And regardless if you have children, you're still paying personal property tax, and those taxes are still going to the schools that are empty. So you have every right to inquire.
Right.
What is going on? Why can't we get more children back into these school buildings?
Right.
And how are we going to go about closing this achievement gap that we've created this last year? What are we going to do about that?
Right. Very good questions. Yeah.
So. There you go. So there you go, listeners. Lots and lots of questions.
We try to leave you with a suggestion, but our larger overall suggestion is start talking to people across racial lines about these things. If you're Black and you're a listener, then see if you can find an open-hearted white woman or man, but we're talking woman to woman here, who is willing to talk with you and not be critical or not be defensive, at least as best they can. And that's what we've done here.
There you go. Don't forget, please comment, like, and subscribe, and click the notification button so you can know when our new videos come out. As always, start talking and keep talking, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.